is JoJo with AAICM for Outer Experiences. It's June 7th, 2020, and I'm on the phone with Tiffany Duncan. Tiffany is currently in California. I'm in Minnesota. Tiffany, what year were you born?
1984.
And where were you born?
Harvey, Illinois.
Okay, but you grew up in Hopkins, Minnesota, right?
I did, yes. I moved there at the age of 4, but we moved to Minnesota when I was like 1 year old, so very young.
Yeah. Okay. And what made and I'm sorry, where were your mother and father born?
Chicago, Illinois, both of them.
Okay. And what made them move to Hopkins?
So they lived in a really rough area, Harvey, and there was a problem with serial murders that were going on at that time in their neighborhood. So from what my mother always told me, it was just for safety reasons, like things got really dangerous. I'm not sure exactly what drew them to that area, but that's what drew them away from Chicago, from Harvey. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. And when was that violence occurring in their neighborhood? Do you remember what years?
That would have been like 1985, 1986.
Okay. And, maybe you lived in different neighborhoods in Hopkins, but how would you characterize your neighborhood?
Oh, in one word, I'd say ticky-tacky. But it was a development. I lived in I'd say a middle-class, lower middle-class development, suburban.
Mm-hmm. And how would you characterize your neighbors and just your experience growing up in that neighborhood?
My neighbors were almost exclusively white, and they were not thrilled that we kids were there. I know that. I could tell they're always yelling at us and stuff like that through their windows, but a little standoffish.
Do you feel that stopped them from letting their kids play with you or interact with you?
I feel like that it wasn't really as in your face or as direct as that. I feel like the kids in my neighborhood had a lot of freedom and choice in who they associated with. So anyone who didn't associate with me, I know it was kind of that kid's decision.
Mm-hmm. So maybe their parents may have been behind it, or?
I think that I feel like there's been a time, I remember very acutely one time where I know for a fact that a parent was behind it. That wasn't until I was about 14. But the instances where it seemed like it was like that other kid's choice, it was just the kid's choice himself, was literally like, it seemed peer pressury almost, except for one instance. I know one girl in the neighborhood told me specifically, I don't want to play with you because you're black. Just like that. I don't want to play with you because you're black. And I'm not sure if that's her parents' influence or what, but, it just, from my perspective, I didn't witness it coming from the parents necessarily, except for, like I said, that one instance.
So how old were you when the kid made that comment?
I think I was about 8 years old. Yeah.
Was that one of the first times you realized you were different because of something someone said, or did that happen earlier?
It did happen earlier. The first time it was kindergarten. It was the first day of school, and I think it's so interesting how I remember this so vividly. But yeah, there was an instance where this little girl came up to me to play and was like super happy, and we were just having a great time playing, and then this group of white girls literally waved her over, and I saw them whispering to each other, and we never and she never played with me again or like spoke to me. And I went to school with this girl from kindergarten to like through high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so she continued not to speak
Yes.
with you or socialize with you.
Right. Since
So
the
pretty
first day of
early.
kindergarten. Yeah, very early.
Okay. Yeah. And speaking of your experiences at school, so if you could just walk me through, where you attended school from elementary to high school, and if you want to tell me about what that was like. I mean, you already mentioned that one incident, but tell me what that was like growing up with a majority white student body.
So, in elementary school, it was kind of learning the ropes. The school I went to was in Minnetonka, and the name of the school is Gatewood Elementary School. It was an interesting place. Nearby there was like a disciplinary home for troubled youth. It was like less than a mile down the road. And then outside of that, it was just a very residential, very suburban area, and the school is kind of tucked into the woods over there. But it was definitely learning the ropes, and it took me a very long time to understand that my outcastness or my exclusion from the other kids was permanent, and there was nothing I could do to change that. I feel like that I learned that in elementary school, and I still hadn't caught on, or I just maybe refused to believe the fact that it was because of my race. Maybe if there were other black kids around at that time that I was close with, maybe we would have talked about that, and maybe I would have like found kinship, but I did not have that. I didn't have access to other black kids really in elementary school. So I was bullied a lot in elementary school, and from the teachers, I mean, and it was, so it's not just really just the students. With the teachers, I was absolutely overlooked, passed over, and kind of ushered through. I feel like there were times where I really needed teachers' intervention during elementary school, and I never received that or really much attention from the teacher. Kind of felt invisible to the teacher in elementary school. And things kind of changed in junior high, which I went to West Junior High. You went there, so I know we went to West together. Did you go to Gatewood Elementary?
No, I went to Alice Smith.
Yeah, okay, that's why I was like, I feel like you weren't there yet. No. So, yeah, junior high, I went to West Junior High, and things were different. And West Junior High is also Minnetonka, and it's almost an identical setting to Gatewood Elementary. It's kind of like in a wooded area. It's highly residential, and I mean, I would say the income there would be upper class, and getting upper middle class, and then scaling upward, in both those areas. So they, there was access there that I did not fully understand or appreciate till later in life. But West Junior High was pretty much the same, and I feel like there was a little bit more acceptance. So things were a little less. It was just a little less extreme, and things began to become a little bit more subtle in junior high. So it's like I wasn't getting bullied anymore. I wasn't having little kids telling, me they won't play with me because I'm black. But I did have friends making fun of my body, in little subtle ways, bullying me over my body. I have a black girl's body, 100%. I did not look around and see anyone that looked like me, not like one other person. Junior high is kind of when that somewhat changed. Maybe there were just a few other girls, but in general there was just more black people. So it was more comfortable to be there, but still not enough, not even close. So what were there like? I'm going to say 6 off the top of my head. 6 black girls that I could think of off the top of my head. you included. But that's I was 14, and actually someone you know, and I won't say names, but they invited me over for a sleepover, right? And this is actually a really interesting story. So, and I was like, okay, let's do it. I go to her house. We have this slumber party. And in the middle of the night, she's like, let's take my parents' car out on a joyride. I'm like, no, please, let's not. Because I'm like, I was 14. And to be honest, I was really not into that kind of like being bad stuff yet. Like I was really like scared of being bad. So I was very like, no, let's not do this. And she insisted and pushing. I was such a pushover. I went along with him like, fine, let's go. So she takes the keys, we get in the car, she drives us out to the boonies, I don't even know where. And of course we get pulled over by the police because we don't know how to drive. That's why we got pulled over, because we're all over the road. And so the police pull her over, and you know, they take us home, or they have her parents pick us up. Her parents get there, and they ask the officers to give me a breathalyzer.
Wow.
Yeah. And the officer was like, this child is not intoxicated. And from what we were to understand, it was the other kid's decision to do this from her own admission. And they just would not believe it. And they insisted that this officer breathalyze me. He didn't, which was great. It was good on his part. My mom came to pick me up after the whole ordeal, and I told her this, and I remember she was just really, really angry, and I didn't really understand why. Like, I didn't care that it happened, but she's like, they did what? Like, she like lost it. She hit the ceiling. And that girl's parents was like, you can't hang out with Tiffany anymore, as if it were me that had done it. And I know now, and I knew then, that it was because I was black. You know, it's obvious. Right. But so that was junior high.
Yeah. Did you feel like right before she asked you to join the joyride, did you have any inkling that if something happened you would get blamed, or did that form later?
It formed later, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like I was a slow learner when it came to this stuff. I was very much still believing the lie that they taught us in elementary school, that everyone was the same. I was like, everyone's the same, so of course nobody's looking at me differently, even though I've had all these situations in which everyone's looked at me differently. It's like gaslighting myself, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But no, I didn't get it. I didn't. You know, that same girl in junior high was the only person to, you know, actively bully me. I remember she like tripped me in the hallway one day because we weren't getting along or something like that. But later in life, she made some snide remarks about Black Lives Matter. And she was saying, she said blocked lives matter. She was talking about blocking black people, and then put up a picture of a black person's short ponytail that was kind of nappy, and was like, this is your hair, and then put a picture of like long lustrous hair. It's like, this is my hair. Like, I was like, dang, she's so racist. Oh my God. Yeah. And she's not even white. And that's like how bad it is. She's not even white. And it only just now came to fullness where I realized how racist she was, and she's one of my closest friends. So, you know, I find that to be often the case with people from the past, but, you know, that was another person from junior high I was close to. But I left Hopkins for a stint. I left for my for ninth grade. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was in Minneapolis for ninth grade.
Okay.
Actually it was eighth and ninth grade. And then part of 10th grade. So there was a stint where my mom pulled me out. I know I got in trouble. I got in trouble in junior high. I didn't mention that actually. There was a girl I slapped across the face. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that at all. So you'll have to tell us about that.
Oh my gosh. it's so hard not to name names because you know all these people, but
Right.
there's this there's this day where that girl I was telling you about with the car incident. So her and this other girl who happened to be white, they kind of like banded together to try to like I guess haze me or whatever, and she tripped me in the hall, and then I walked a few paces and the white girl tripped me in the hall, and I was like, I had this snap decision. I just wailed around and slapped her silly. Girl, it was a slap heard around the world, and then the classroom doors opened like it was in a movie or something.
Oh, wow.
And she's just screaming there, holding her face, and she was like, I dare you to hit me again. Do it again. I dare you. And I was just like, I'm not going to do it with all these witnesses. However, she never hit me back, but I got suspended, and I think that's when my mom was like, okay, let's try something else. And that's when I spent some time going to school downtown Minneapolis. It was interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, so tell us how that differed, that, growing up in Hopkins for all of your formative years and then being pulled out as difficult as it was to grow up Black in Hopkins. But what was it like to be put in a more diverse setting? Were you immediately accepted? Were there differences? What was that like for those few years?
It was very good, and it was really, really awful. It was like very embarrassing and very good for other reasons. It's so hard. And it's interesting. My first day seems to be the hardest day for me because the first day of school there is this fellow student, very good looking. I would say he was the cutest boy in the school. And this school is called, I'm sorry, I didn't say it, Interdistrict Downtown School. And this was their first year they opened, and it was an art school. So we got to take classes at the Orpheum. I took music at McPhail, and we got to perform at the Illusion Theater, which is like not far. So it was really cool. It was a great idea. But anyway, first day of school, this very, very cute Black boy comes up to me, and he's like, hey, what's your name, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hi, I'm Tiffany, with my, like, ridiculous white girl suburban accent, not having a clue this was not okay. And his eyes turned into saucers, and he's like, yo, come over here. I'm not even kidding, JoJo, this happened to me. And gathered everyone around, and they're like, listen to this girl talk. I shit you not, that's what happened.
Wow, so pretty traumatizing. And this was the first day?
It was the first day.
Okay.
It was the first day. At that point, as far as being humiliated in front of class, I had gone through so much of that in junior high and elementary school. I'm not sure I had much self-esteem left at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just like, I didn't even know how I reacted. I can't remember much of a reaction other than thinking it was like the most shocking experience of my life. And I mean, now I laugh at it and I'm like, did I cry? I don't remember. I don't recall crying, but I mean, perhaps I did. Interestingly enough, that boy on the last day of school, the same guy asked me out, and I said no, and I laughed.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting that, it's like even that peer pressure would make you treat someone that you're interested in that way for so long, because it's like he bullied me throughout the 2.5 years I went there. It was continuous. This one guy. And other than that, so I mean, it's just like I didn't fit in with Black kids. They were not really interested in me. They were not interested in getting to know me. I'm not sure exactly what they thought of me. It was like, I hung out with the white kids, and, I mean, like, it was just familiar, but I always wanted to be part of the Black community. Like, I always wanted to be part of, their camaraderie, and I wasn't able to do that in high school. So it's like, I missed out on that, a great deal.
Right. Right. And you said, was it in 10th grade that you returned back to Hopkins?
I returned, yes, it was like halfway through. I went back mid-year. Actually, it was because I started working a job at Hopkins Theater, and I had my first little boyfriend. He was going to Hopkins, so I was like, okay, I guess I better go to Hopkins High School. That's what I thought. But I did want to say a quick note on that one school that I did go to, inter-district school. There was an instance where me and my white friends broke all the rules. We broke like this very important rule. We were on a field trip and we went AWOL, and it was actually if you did that, you could get expelled, and none of us were expelled, and the black kids were pissed. They were like, they didn't get expelled because they're white. And I was just thrown in that. And they're like, when they used me, I was like, well, they're not white because Tiffany's not white. But I knew it was because they were white. I knew that they were right. But I benefited just from being part of that. But yeah, that's, the most notable thing there. But I did start going back to Hopkins and working at Hopkins Theater. About halfway through 10th grade.
Mm-hmm. Is that the Hopkins Man Theater?
Yes.
Okay, so the movie theater on Main Street.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess working there was weird. A lot of weird things happened there that probably shouldn't have. That place was highly illegal. Highly illegal. Yeah. Did you want to know about the theater?
Yeah, you can talk about it
Okay.
if you feel so. And that may even tie into the next question, which is if you ever felt unsafe in your town in Hopkins.
Oh, yeah. That job was probably the worst thing for me to be doing. I was a good kid and I really fell in with a bad crowd. And some of those people were adults. So there was a lot of adults, just like predators, around the theater, running the theater, working there, and they really took advantage of the teens, myself included, and other teens. And looking back, it was a mess. It was really terrible. And I was in plenty of unsafe situations, that involved or swirled around the people that work there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
that tied into you returning back to Hopkins High
It
School.
did.
Correct.
It did. I ended up going back to Hopkins. I'm not sure exactly what I think actually a lot of my friends were not going back to interdistrict anyway for the following year. So I was like, why not just go ahead and cut it and, try go back home and try it out. And like I said, my boyfriend worked at the theater, so, that's another reason I kind of got roped in. So, came back to Hopkins, and, things were oddly different, I felt. Things were oddly different for me. I think that I kind of had just hardened maybe over the years a little bit, but I no longer really had much energy for, caring anymore about whether or not I was accepted and who I was accepted by, and whether or not I could identify with my peers. And, I just kind of gave up on being able to be social, or having any kind of a normal social life. It just wasn't going to happen. I felt like it was never going to happen for me by that time.
Yeah. So do you think that happened because it remained majority white, or did you come across other black kids as you got older? Did Hopkins diversify at all? I guess what I'm trying to say, did you find any area where you could dig in and have a social life?
I tried. I felt like I was never truly accepted. And this is something I hear from you hear it all the time. People are like, well, I was kind of on the outside of a lot of different groups or whatever. I feel like that was the case certainly with me, of being like tolerated but never accepted. Like Tiffany can be here as a decoration. Tiffany can be here as just like an accent to us, but we don't care about her life. We don't care about anything she may be going through or interest or anything like that. So it's like very one-dimensional types of relationships. As far as diversity went, it was very difficult for me to have real, like, strong friendships with other Black people in Hopkins. I feel like, and this is saying a lot. So, because you're Black and you went there, like, I don't know if you can relate or if you can understand this, but I just feel like it was kind of like the Highlander, like there can only be one. Like, in whatever given group, it's like if there's two Black people, there's this discomfort that settled in. And so oftentimes I find myself the only one amongst my friends. I felt bullied by there's certain people in particular that, attempted to, physically bully me in high school. I found that to be strange. I felt like we were too old for that. But definitely on the fringes of both, and absolutely not accepted in either. So I don't think that I really found that. I did theater. I did well in theater, and so it's like, I guess in that sense, I kind of, but even still, like, I was still on the outside of that group. You know what I mean? Like, I was part of the cast, but there was something else going on that I was not really able to be part of. A whole, like, actual connection that I wasn't able to be a part of. Even though I was technically a part of it, it's hard to explain that. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Right. Yeah, no, it does. And I think that gets to my next question of, you didn't feel those connections at Hopkins. Was there a point later in life where you started to finally make those connections, and were you still in Minnesota? Were you out of Minnesota?
I felt, to be honest, I felt that most of the real connections I've made in my lifetime have been outside of Minnesota now. I lived in Denver for a little while. I've done a little bit of traveling here in the U.S. It's kind of been more, a free spirit, a rolling stone, what have you. But, so it's like, I think I found that in individuals here and there. And, I'm queer. I'm a queer person. And, I would consider myself to be non-binary. And I find, some companionship with non-binary people as well. But to be honest, I consider myself to be, always the stranger amongst the group. I didn't grow up in a typical circumstance. People can usually pick that up on me. People assume a lot about me that generally isn't true. And so it's kind of led me to be more of an introvert over the years. And I express a lot of myself, and I feel heard through my work and through my art. So it's like I paint and I sculpt and stuff like that. I sing, and I feel like people see me and hear me when I'm doing those things, but those things at the same time are isolating. So it's not, I wish I could tell you yes, that I found like this great social group, but I did not, to be honest. I usually, it's hard for me to reach back. A lot of my friends I've known since high school and such, I had to end a 15-year friendship, which was very difficult, just because she was too racist to just be around. I couldn't get, and it's not so much like I couldn't unhear things that were said, it's just the current things, and the current ignorance and it was too much for me. So, even that friendship like that wasn't really accessible. Like, it's hard for me to be friends with people in Minnesota. It really is.
Right. Maybe it's something people don't acknowledge completely about your experience, and not just in Hopkins but in Minnesota too.
Right. I feel like people don't understand it, and like a lot of people who live there don't recognize it, but even more people who don't live there don't recognize it. Like it's very subtle, the exclusion, and it's so silent. You know? But it's absolutely deafening. Like, you get the message. You are not welcome to be part of the suburban, like, social club. And if you grew up there, then you're kind of stuck in this in-between because of their influence, you know, it just robs you of this ability to relate easily to Black people. It's really, it's been, you know, very difficult, and I think that's like one of the great tragedies of my life is I'm like, oh no, I was robbed of so much that was worth so much to me.
Right. And thinking about those, you know, your experiences and thinking about why your parents moved from Illinois even, do you think there were any bright spots or any benefits that you got from growing up in a place like Hopkins versus anywhere else in Minnesota or even compared to the city? Do you think there's anything that either shaped your personality you think wouldn't have happened in Hopkins, or education?
Yeah. Well, that's a definite yes. There's a lot of, privileges I have now just because of the way that I sound. Like I said, people assume a lot, which I find to be quite interesting. Like, people assume that that I grew up, like, rich. Isn't that weird? And yeah, I know, it's weird. People assume that I grew up with money, and it's like, no, lower middle class family. I hate to say, it just sucks that people, it's like, I feel like people take me more seriously sometimes than other Black people who grew up in an inner city just because of the way that I talk. I feel more listened to. And I feel like I've watched other Black people be silenced in a room, and yet they had something important to say. And this is at a meeting, like an intentional meeting about, it was in South Minneapolis. I struggle. I think it was like about, Black women organizing in South Minneapolis. It's such a, anyway, but, there was a meeting, and, this inner city Black lady was, had some opinions to share, and like, she just wasn't as quote unquote as articulate, as I or some other people in the room, and they literally just, nobody listened to her and just like shut her up. And then like someone else came up and basically like contradicted a lot of what she said, like kind of just like made her opinion like not important to be heard anymore. And like then everyone just moved on like it didn't happen. And it's like, I recognized it for what it is because it's happened to me so many times. But I think that there are privileges to, just like I said, having the good white girl voice gets you far in life. Mm-hmm. Other than that, let me think. Education-wise, obviously, and you know what? This is hilarious. In high school, do you remember when you could shadow and go to a different person's high school if you wanted to for the day? Did you ever do that?
I did not do that. Yeah.
Girl, yes, they let you do that. And so me and my friends always took advantage of that. I don't know if you ever remember me showing up with a random person at our school. But yeah, I brought my friend, and she went to school at Southwest High School. She was white. Her name was Ange. Oh, I'll be quiet. Anyway, she's cool. Anyways, good story. She wouldn't even care. Anyway, but she went to Southwest, and we went to Hopkins High School, right? And I brought her to my high school for the day, and I remember how her jaw hit the floor when we walked through the door, and she's like, what the heck? You guys have air conditioning? Look at this place, it's huge. And she was just going on and on about the lunch and the different gyms, and I didn't realize that our school was great. I didn't realize that our school was like better than other schools, to be honest. I was ignorant, and I really thought that all schools were like the same. and then we switched and I went to her high school in South Minneapolis, Southwest High School. Oh my God, girl. It was so messed up. Oh, it was overcrowded and the hallways were so narrow you could not breathe in the hallways during passing time. I don't think they had an air conditioner because it was sweltering hot and all the windows were open. And then the curriculum was extremely it was like dumbed down. Like they weren't learning enough. Oh my God.
Mm.
It was so bad. Yes.
Yeah. So you were witnessing that divestment that was happening
Yes.
in the 90s, right?
Oh yeah.
For Minneapolis schools through your friend's eyes and through just spending a day with her.
Right. It was really a wake up. I had no idea. So, I mean, educationally speaking, it was easy for me to take, it's easy, when you speak the language, that certain tests are geared toward, they measure whiteness, like standardized testing and stuff has always been easy for me. Essay writing has always been easy for me. It's because of that early white education I got in the deep suburbs, and I know it. Things that we learned, we learned critical thinking, whereas the kids in the inner city were not taught critical thinking. They're taught how to follow directions and how to, do like rote tasks. It's been a huge benefit to my life, and not only mine, but I realize and recognize it in my kids. Like my kids are more articulate than other kids that they go to school with. And it's because that's how we are at home. We read because, I've been reading since very, very, very early. And, it was really pushed in our household to read and stuff like that. But I know that's because of access to education that's been happening in my particular family. And that's not the case with all Black families. And so it's like this idea of like how education is passed through the generations via just at home from mom and from dad, that actually counts for something. I don't think people realize like that it matters and it's going to affect like your education and how you interact with your kids at home. That's going to affect how they grow up and think as well, is all I was getting at. So yeah, it's like I absolutely see the benefits.
But you had to pay kind of a steep price for that.
Oh my God. That's what you got to ask yourself. Was it all worth it? But I'm kind of like, does it really matter? I feel like my mom, she really made a hard choice. But if I were in her position, would I have done the same thing? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. I don't think she understood how erasure happens and how someone can culturally lose themselves because she didn't have to experience that. So I know she didn't see it coming. And she told me that, she actually told me that. She said when I was in junior high, she's like, I didn't know that when you came out here, that when I moved y'all out here, that y'all would like lose your Blackness. That's what she said. Mm-hmm. And, she said, I thought that because we're Black and, because you're Black, that you'd still be acting Black. And, that's what she said when she pulled me out. But it's just like, 14, a little too late at that point. I'm grown up now, but I understand, she didn't get it till then. That's when she saw what was happening. It's a little late.
Mm-hmm. If you could, and this is probably my last question, but if you could relate or distill, and this is tough, your experience in the burbs and relate that to people outside of suburbs and to the city, what would you want them to know? Or what do you think would be helpful for even, a younger you to know about growing up in that environment?
Ooh. Can you repeat that just one more time?
Yeah. So that's a tough one. So what would you want to relate to a wider audience, like someone in the city or, definitely outside of Hopkins, about growing up, Black in a majority white suburb. And, you could be talking to your past self or having advice for, people who are presently in the minority in places that are majority white. Just what would you want to express about your experience in the burbs?
It's so difficult to keep a handle on yourself. It's like you really need, and you really got to have a strong family unit. I think that's like really the, what helps someone, the most who were going through an experience like that. If you got a strong family, you can get through a lot. But without that, you're surely going to experience a little slipping through the cracks, and definitely some ostracization. But definitely I would say is just be open to these people. Like, there's not a set of ingredients that make someone black it's just the color of your skin. And like, Black people come in so many different kinds of personalities, and like we talk in all different ways and have all kinds of different accents. And so it's like at the end of the day, to have such a narrow view of what it means to be Black, it's limiting. And I think that it limits us to learning about ourselves because we're not getting the full Black experience. We're not getting like the full picture. We're not the only Black people who grew up in majority white suburban America. There's more of us out there, but there's not, this story's not told a lot. So I would just say be open to listening. And, there's definitely something to take away from, both experiences. Absolutely. But yeah, that's what I would say, I guess.
Right. Well, Tiffany, that ends my questions. I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much, and you're welcome.